How I lost everything in my divorce because my lawyer got greedy. This is the story of how I went through a divorce that should have been straightforward and ended up with absolutely nothing. No alimony, no equity from the house we bought together, nothing but a massive pile of debt and the realization that the legal system doesn't care about fairness. I married Tom when I was 25. We met in college, dated for 4 years, and got married right after I finished my teaching degree. He was working in sales at the time, making decent money, and I'd just gotten hired as an elementary school teacher in our local district. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We could pay our bills, take a vacation once a year, save a little bit. Normal middle-class life. The first few years were good. We bought a small house in a suburb outside the city, 3 bedrooms, decent yard, in a neighborhood with good schools, even though we didn't have kids yet. We were planning to start a family eventually, but wanted to get established first, pay down some debt, build up savings, be responsible adults about it. I loved teaching. Still do, honestly, despite everything that happened. I teach 2nd grade, and there's something magical about that age where kids are learning to read fluently and their personalities are really developing. The pay isn't great. Everyone knows teachers are underpaid, but I'd known that going into the profession. I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it because I genuinely loved working with kids. Tom's job was more lucrative. He was in pharmaceutical sales, which meant a base salary plus commission. When he had good months, he made really good money. When he had bad months, it was tighter, but still okay. On average, he made about twice what I made. We kept our finances mostly joint, 1 checking account, 1 savings account, both our names on everything. The house was in both our names. We were a team, or so I thought. Around year 6 of our marriage, things started to shift. Tom became more distant. He worked longer hours, was on his phone constantly, seemed irritated by everything I did. I chalked it up to stress at work. His company had gone through some restructuring, and he was worried about his job security. I tried to be supportive, give him space when he needed it, be there when he wanted to talk. Looking back, I can see all the classic signs I was missing. The phone angled away from me, the sudden need for privacy, the unexplained absences, and the defensive responses when I asked simple questions about his day. But when you're living in it, when you trust someone completely, you don't see those things as red flags. You see them as your partner going through a rough time. The fight started around month 8 of this weird period. Stupid fights about nothing. I'd ask him to pick up milk on the way home, and he'd snap at me for treating him like an errand boy. I'd suggest we do something together on the weekend, and he'd accuse me of being clingy. Everything I did seemed to annoy him. I started walking on eggshells in my own home, trying to avoid triggering another argument. My friends noticed, my mom noticed. They'd ask if everything was okay with Tom, and I'd defend him, say he was distressed at work, say every marriage goes through rough patches, say we were fine. I think I was trying to convince myself as much as them. Then came the night that changed everything. I came home from a particularly exhausting day at school. We'd had state testing, and 2nd graders doing standardized tests is chaos. I was mentally and emotionally drained. I walked in the house, and Tom was sitting at the kitchen table with this weird expression on his face. He said we needed to talk, those 4 words that you never want to hear. He said he hadn't been happy for a long time. He said he'd been thinking about our marriage and where it was going. He said he thought we wanted different things out of life, and then he said he wanted a divorce. I was blindsided, completely and utterly blindsided. Yes, things have been rough lately, but divorce? It seemed extreme. I asked if we could try counseling. He said no, his mind was made up. I asked if there was someone else. He said no, but in a way that made me pretty sure there was. He moved out 2 days later, just packed up his stuff and left. Went to stay with his parents, who lived about 30 minutes away. His parents had always been wealthy. His dad owned a successful construction company, and his mom came from old money. They lived in this massive house in the nicest part of town. Tom grew up with every advantage, went to private schools, had a trust fund he'd never touched because he wanted to make his own way in life. I'd always respected that about him. The first few weeks after Tom left were a blur. I went through the motions. Got up, went to teach 7-year-olds, Came home, cried, repeat. My principal noticed I was struggling and was incredibly kind about it, told me to take whatever time I needed. But I didn't want time off. I wanted to stay busy. My students were the only thing keeping me sane. I told my parents. My mom wanted to drive up immediately, but I told her I needed some time to process. My dad was angry, wanted to know what Tom had done to make this happen. I didn't have answers. I genuinely didn't know why my marriage was ending. Tom and I had to figure out the logistics. We were still paying a mortgage on the house. We had joint credit cards, joint utilities, all the financial entanglements of a marriage. He wanted to keep paying his half of everything while we figured out the divorce. I agreed because I couldn't afford the whole mortgage on my teacher's salary. I found out about the other woman about 3 weeks after he left. A friend of mine saw Tom at a restaurant with someone. They were holding hands across the table. My friend was horrified and didn't want to tell me, but felt like I needed to know. The woman was younger than me, worked in his industry, was apparently someone he'd been spending a lot of time with for work. When I confronted Tom about it, he didn't even try to deny it. Said he'd met her 6 months ago, said they'd connected on a level he and I never had, said he hadn't meant for it to happen, but feelings developed. He swore nothing physical happened until after he moved out, but I don't know if I believe that. The betrayal hurt worse than the divorce itself. It's one thing to fall out of love. It happens. People grow apart. But to cheat, to lie, to let me think I was crazy for noticing him pulling away when really he was building a whole relationship with someone else, that felt cruel. I knew I needed a lawyer. This wasn't going to be one of those friendly divorces where you split everything amicably and file the paperwork yourself. Tom had already gotten a lawyer. His parents had apparently recommended someone, a family friend who specialized in divorce. Of course, his parents were helping him. They'd always favored Tom, their only child, always smoothed his path through life. I'd always respected that about him. I asked around for recommendations. One of my coworkers had gone through a divorce a few years ago and gave me the name of her lawyer. I also got names from a few other people. I called 4 different lawyers and set up consultations. The consultations were depressing. Each lawyer asked about our assets and income. We had the house, which we'd bought for $280,000 7 years ago. We'd put down $40,000 that came from Tom's trust fund and wedding gift money from both sets of parents. We'd paid down some of the mortgage, but still owed about $200,000. The house was now worth around $320,000 based on recent sales in our neighborhood. So there was equity there, maybe $120,000 worth. We had some retirement savings. I had my teacher's pension fund that I'd been paying into. Tom had a 401k from his company. We had a joint savings account with about $15,000 in it. We had the usual stuff, furniture, cars, nothing particularly valuable. I'd brought some family heirlooms into the marriage, a few pieces of jewelry for my grandmother, photo albums, things with sentimental value but not much monetary worth. Every lawyer I talked to said roughly the same thing. In our state, assets acquired during marriage are considered marital property and generally split 50-50. Since I made significantly less than Tom and had lower earning potential as a teacher, I'd likely be entitled to some alimony, probably for a few years. The house would probably be sold and the equity split, or one of us would buy the other out. It all sounded fair and reasonable. The lawyer I ended up hiring was named Patricia Sanderson. She came recommended by 2 different people and had great reviews online. She'd been practicing family law for 15 years and seemed knowledgeable and confident. Her consultation fee was $200, which she'd applied toward my retainer if I hired her.
She said we had leverage. Tom wanted this done quickly. He was already living with his girlfriend and apparently wanted to move forward with that relationship without the complication of still being legally married. His parents were probably tired of paying his legal bills. If we pushed, she thought they'd give us more, just to end it. I asked how much more she thought we could get. She estimated maybe another $10,000 to $15,000 total. Not a fortune, but not nothing either. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to just take the deal on the table, but another part of me was angry. Angry at Tom for cheating and blowing up our marriage. Angry at his parents for funding his expensive lawyer while I was drowning in debt. Angry at the whole situation. Why should I settle for fair when I could get what I actually deserved? Patricia encouraged me to think about it, but said she recommended we counter. She said in her professional opinion, we could get more and we should try. She reminded me that her job was to get me the best possible outcome. I made a decision I regret to this day. I told her to counter. Patricia sent a counteroffer. We'd accept the terms, but wanted $55,000 for the house equity and 4 years of alimony instead of 3, an additional $10,000 up front, and another $14,000 in that extra year of payments. Totally reasonable ask, or so Patricia framed it. Tom's lawyer responded within a day. The answer was simple and devastating. Settlement offer withdrawn. They were going to court. Patricia tried to walk it back, contacted Tom's lawyer and said we'd accept the original offer. Too late. Tom's lawyer said his client had made a fair offer, we'd rejected it by countering, and now they were prepared to fight this out in court. No more settlement discussions. I panicked. Patricia said not to worry, that this was a negotiating tactic, that they'd come back to the table eventually. But weeks went by, and they didn't. They were preparing for trial, requesting more documents, deposing witnesses, building their case. My legal bills kept climbing. $400 here for a phone call, $800 there for document review, $1,500 for deposition prep. Patricia kept assuring me this was all necessary, that we were building a strong case, that a judge would see reason. My $15,000 loan was gone in 2 months. I took out another loan, this time from a different bank, for $10,000 at an even worse interest rate. I was now paying over $600 a month just in loan payments, on top of my half of the mortgage and all my other expenses. I stopped eating lunch. Literally just skipped lunch every day to save money. I was surviving on coffee and whatever cheap groceries I can afford. I lost 15 pounds in 2 months from stress and not eating enough. My principal called me into her office to ask if I was okay. I lied and said I was fine. The trial date was set for 5 months away. Patricia said to prepare for the process to be grueling, but that we had right on our side. She seemed confident. I wanted to believe her. Preparing for trial was a nightmare. Patricia needed me to document everything, every contribution I'd made to our marriage, financial or otherwise, every household expense I'd paid, every sacrifice I'd made for Tom's career, every way I'd supported our life together. I spent hours creating spreadsheets and gathering receipts and writing out timelines. The grocery receipts I'd paid for over the years, the time I'd turned down a summer teaching opportunity because Tom wanted us to travel together, the career moves I'd made to accommodate his job changes. All of it needed to be documented and quantified. Patricia billed me for every hour she spent reviewing these documents. My legal bills were now over $18,000 and climbing. I'd stopped looking at the invoices because seeing the numbers made me physically ill. Tom was apparently spending even more on his lawyer. His parents were footing the bill, and apparently money was no object. They wanted to make sure their son didn't get taken advantage of by his gold-digger ex-wife. That's actually what Tom's mother said to my mother at some point during this mess, that I was trying to take advantage of her son and she wouldn't let it happen. Never mind that I'd supported Tom emotionally through job stress and family drama for 7 years. Never mind that I'd been a faithful wife who'd done nothing wrong except have the bad fortune to fall in love with someone who decided to upgrade to a newer model. None of that mattered. In his parents' eyes, I was the villain. The trial date got pushed back twice due to scheduling conflicts. Each delay meant more time paying half the mortgage on a house I couldn't afford alone, more time in legal limbo, more time bleeding money I didn't have. I started having panic attacks. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning with my heart racing in this overwhelming sense of dread. I'd lie there doing mental math, trying to figure out how I'd survive financially no matter what happened in court. Even if I won everything Patricia thought I'd get, I'd still be in massive debt from legal fees. My doctor prescribed anti-anxiety medication, added another monthly expense to the pile, even with insurance. The trial finally happened about 1 year and 2 months after Tom had first asked for a divorce. I'd been living in limbo for 1 year, barely surviving financially, emotionally exhausted, all for this moment. The trial lasted 3 days. 3 days of sitting in a courtroom while lawyers argued about the value of my marriage and contributions. 3 days of being cross-examined by Tom's lawyer, who painted me as a bitter ex-wife trying to take advantage of her more successful husband. 3 days of watching Tom sit there looking calm and reasonable while I probably looked like the unstable one since I'd lost so much weight and looked exhausted. Patricia presented our case. She had the financial documents showing the house equity, the income disparity, the length of marriage. She had my testimony about my contributions to our household. She argued that I deserved half the marital assets and sufficient alimony to maintain something resembling the standard of living we had established during marriage. Tom's lawyer tore it apart. He argued that the down payment on the house had come from his trust fund, making it separate property, not subject to division. He argued that my teaching salary was steady and sufficient to support myself, negating the need for alimony. He argued that the savings account had been funded primarily by Tom's income and I'd contributed minimally. He painted Tom as the victim of a marriage that hadn't worked out through no fault of his own, and me as someone trying to profit from the situation. The judge asked questions about our finances, our careers, our plans for the future. She seemed sympathetic, but also practical. She took copious notes. She didn't indicate which way she was leaning. After 3 days of testimony and arguments, the judge said she'd review everything and issue a ruling within 30 days. We all left the courtroom, and I felt completely numb. Patricia said she thought it went well, that the judge seemed to understand our position. I wanted to believe her, but I had this sinking feeling in my stomach. Tom's lawyer apparently told him the same thing, that it had gone well. We were both walking out of there thinking we'd won. Only one of us could be right. The ruling came down 4 weeks later. Patricia called me at school during my planning period to tell me that it wasn't good news. I could tell from her voice immediately. The judge had ruled in Tom's favor on nearly every point. The house was awarded to Tom entirely. The judge agreed with his lawyer that the down payment from his trust fund made it separate property, and I had no claim to the equity. The savings account would be split, so I'd get my $7,500 there. My retirement account stayed mine, his stayed his, and no alimony. The judge ruled that I had a stable career with steady income and didn't need spousal support. I was getting $7,500 total from a 7-year marriage. About $1,000 per year of my life I invested in the relationship. Patricia sounded shocked. She said she genuinely hadn't expected this outcome. She said the judge had sided with arguments she considered weak. She said we could appeal, but it would cost more money and there was no guarantee we'd win. I asked about my legal bills. Patricia said my total fees were just over $20,000. I owed her another $5,000 beyond what I'd already paid. So I was getting $7,500 from the divorce settlement and owed $5,000 in remaining legal fees. Net result? $2,500 and a mountain of loan debt with monthly payments I could barely afford. Tom got the house, the appreciation in its value, everything in it, and no legal bills since his parents had paid for everything. I sat in my empty classroom after the school day ended and cried for 2 straight hours. Everything I'd fought for, all the money I'd spent, all the stress and anxiety and sleepless nights, and this was the result. I'd effectively paid $20,000 to lose my divorce. The next few months were the darkest of my life. I had to move out of the house within 60 days per the judge's order. I couldn't afford to rent a decent apartment in the area, so I ended up in a tiny studio in a not great neighborhood. $600 a month for 400 square feet. I sold most of my furniture because it wouldn't fit, kept only what I absolutely needed. My parents offered to help financially, but they're retired on a fixed income, and I refused to take their money. They'd already helped me so much by just being emotional support through the whole nightmare. I was working my teaching job and tutoring 3 nights a week and Saturday mornings just to make ends meet. My loan payments were killing me. Between the 2 personal loans I had taken out, I was paying over $600 a month just in loan payments, plus my half of the mortgage and all my other expenses. I stopped eating lunch. Literally just skipped lunch every day to save money.
I lost 15 pounds in 2 months from stress and not eating enough. My principal called me into her office to ask if I was okay. I lied and said I was fine. The trial date was set for 5 months away. Patricia said to prepare for the process to be grueling, but that we had right on our side. She seemed confident. I wanted to believe her. Preparing for trial was a nightmare. Patricia needed me to document everything. Every contribution I'd made to our marriage, financial or otherwise. Every household expense I'd paid. Every sacrifice I'd made for Tom's career. Every way I'd supported our life together. I spent hours creating spreadsheets and gathering receipts and writing out timelines. The grocery receipts I'd paid for over the years. The time I turned down a summer teaching opportunity because Tom wanted us to travel together. The career moves I'd made to accommodate his job changes. All of it needed to be documented and quantified. Patricia billed me for every hour she spent reviewing these documents. My legal bills were now over $18,000 and climbing. I'd stopped looking at the invoices because seeing the numbers made me physically ill. Tom was apparently spending even more on his lawyer. His parents were footing the bill, and apparently money was no object. They wanted to make sure their son didn't get taken advantage of by his gold-digger ex-wife. That's actually what Tom's mother said to my mother at some point during this mess, that I was trying to take advantage of her son and she wouldn't let it happen. Never mind that I'd supported Tom emotionally through job stress and family drama for 7 years. Never mind that I'd been a faithful wife who'd done nothing wrong except have the bad fortune to fall in love with someone who decided to upgrade to a newer model. None of that mattered. In his parents' eyes, I was the villain. The trial date got pushed back twice due to scheduling conflicts. Each delay meant more time paying half the mortgage on a house I couldn't afford alone. More time in legal limbo. More time bleeding money I didn't have. I started having panic attacks. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning with my heart racing and this overwhelming sense of dread. I'd lie there doing mental math, trying to figure out how I'd survive financially no matter what happened in court. Even if I won everything Patricia thought I'd get, I'd still be in massive debt from legal fees. My doctor prescribed anti-anxiety medication, added another monthly expense to the pile, even with insurance. The trial finally happened about 1 year and 2 months after Tom had first asked for a divorce. I'd been living in limbo for over 1 year, barely surviving financially, emotionally exhausted, all for this moment. The trial lasted 3 days. 3 days of sitting in a courtroom while lawyers argued about the value of my marriage and contributions. 3 days of being cross-examined by Tom's lawyer, who painted me as a bitter ex-wife trying to take advantage of her more successful husband. 3 days of watching Tom sit there looking calm and reasonable, while I probably looked like the unstable one since I'd lost so much weight and looked exhausted. Patricia presented our case. She had the financial documents showing the house equity, the income disparity, the length of marriage. She had my testimony about my contributions to our household. She argued that I deserved half the marital assets and sufficient alimony to maintain something resembling the standard of living we'd established during marriage. Tom's lawyer tore it apart. He argued that the down payment on the house had come from Tom's trust fund, making it separate property not subject to division. He argued that my teaching salary was steady and sufficient to support myself, negating the need for alimony. He argued that the savings account had been funded primarily by Tom's income, and I'd contributed minimally. He painted Tom as the victim of a marriage that hadn't worked out through no fault of his own, and me as someone trying to profit from the situation. The judge asked questions about our finances, our careers, our plans for the future. She seemed sympathetic but also practical. She took copious notes. She didn't indicate which way she was leaning. After 3 days of testimony and arguments, the judge said she'd review everything and issue a ruling within 30 days. We all left the courtroom and I felt completely numb. Patricia said she thought it went well, that the judge seemed to understand our position. I wanted to believe her, but I had this sinking feeling in my stomach. Tom's lawyer apparently told him the same thing, that it had gone well.
We were both walking out of there thinking we'd won. Only one of us could be right. The ruling came down 4 weeks later. Patricia called me at school during my planning period to tell me. I could tell from her voice immediately that it wasn't good news. The judge had ruled in Tom's favor on nearly every point. The house was awarded to Tom entirely. The judge agreed with his lawyer that the down payment from his trust fund made it separate property and that I had no claim to the equity. The savings account would be split, so I'd get my $7,500 there. My retirement account stayed mine, his stayed his. And no alimony. The judge ruled that I had a stable career with steady income and didn't need spousal support. I was getting $7,500 total from a 7-year marriage, about $1,000 per year of my life I'd invested in the relationship. Patricia sounded shocked. She said she genuinely hadn't expected this outcome. She said the judge had sided with arguments she considered weak. She said we could appeal, but it would cost more money, and there was no guarantee we'd win. I asked about my legal bills. Patricia said my total fees were just over $20,000. I owed her another $5,000 beyond what I'd already paid. So I was getting $7,500 from the divorce and owing $5,000 in remaining legal fees. Net result, $2,500 and a mountain of loan debt with monthly payments I could barely afford. Tom got the house, the appreciation in its value, everything in it, and no legal bills since his parents had paid for everything. I sat in my empty classroom after the school day ended and cried for 2 hours straight. Everything I'd fought for, all the money I'd spent, all the stress and anxiety and sleepless nights, and this was the result. I'd effectively paid $20,000 to lose my divorce. The next few months were the darkest of my life. I had to move out of the house within 60 days per the judge's order. I couldn't afford to rent a decent apartment in the area, so I ended up in a tiny studio in a not great neighborhood. $600 a month for 400 square feet. I sold most of my furniture because it wouldn't fit, kept only what I absolutely needed. My parents offered to help financially, but they're retired on a fixed income and I refused to take their money. They'd already helped me so much by just being emotional support through the whole nightmare. I was working my teaching job and tutoring 3 nights a week and Saturday mornings just to make ends meet. My loan payments were killing me. Between the 2 personal loans I'd taken out, I was paying almost $700 a month just in loan payments, plus my rent, utilities, car payment, insurance, food, everything else. I was barely surviving. The $7,500 from the divorce settlement went immediately to paying down the credit cards I'd maxed out during the divorce process. It made a dent, but didn't come close to clearing them. I was 33 years old and starting completely over. No savings, massive debt, living in a studio apartment, working 2 jobs. This was not how I'd imagined my life turning out when I'd gotten married at 25, with hopes and dreams and plans for the future. Tom, meanwhile, moved into a nice apartment with his girlfriend, posted photos of them together looking happy, eventually blocked me when I couldn't stop myself from torturing myself by checking his profiles. Patricia sent me a final bill with the remaining balance I owed, $5,000 and change. I set up a payment plan to pay her $200 a month until it was cleared. She was surprisingly understanding about it, maybe because she felt guilty about how everything had turned out. She at least acknowledged that she'd been wrong to encourage me to counter that settlement offer. I spent a lot of time thinking about where everything went wrong. The obvious answer is that I shouldn't have countered that settlement offer. I should have taken the reasonable deal on the table and walked away. I'd have $45,000 in the bank right now instead of massive debt. I'd have 3 years of alimony coming in to supplement my income. I'd be in an infinitely better position. But the deeper answer is more complicated. I trusted my lawyer to give me good advice, and she gave me bad advice. She saw an opportunity to push for more and encouraged me to take it without fully considering the risk. Maybe she was thinking about the additional billable hours a prolonged fight would generate. Maybe she genuinely thought we'd win. I'll never know. I also learned that the legal system is not about fairness or justice. It's about who can afford the better lawyer and who has the resources to outlast the other side. Tom's parents had deep pockets and were willing to fund his fight indefinitely. I was scraping together money from payday loans and credit cards. We weren't in a fair fight from the beginning. The judge's ruling still baffles me. Patricia said it was an outlier, that most judges would have ruled differently. But we got the judge we got, and she saw things Tom's way. Maybe she believed his lawyer's arguments. Maybe she had some bias I'll never know about. Maybe it was just bad luck. But the result was that I lost everything. I learned that greed, even justified greed, even the feeling that you deserve more, can destroy you. That settlement offer was fair. I should have taken it. My anger at Tom and his family, my feeling that I deserved better, my lawyer's encouragement to push for more, all of it led me to make a catastrophic decision. It's been 2 years now since the divorce was finalized. I'm still paying off the debt, but I've made progress. The credit cards are cleared, one of the personal loans is paid off.
I'm slowly climbing out of the hole. I'm still teaching second grade, still love it despite everything. My students don't know anything about my personal struggles, and that's how it should be. They just know me as the teacher who's always cheerful and patient and excited about books. I'm in therapy now, which I should have started way earlier, working through the trauma of the divorce and the betrayal and the financial devastation, learning to trust again, learning to advocate for myself, learning that my worth isn't tied to my relationship status or my bank account. I'm dating someone new, actually, a nice man I met through a friend, a middle school teacher who understands the profession and doesn't care that I'm not wealthy. We're taking it very slow. I'm not ready to rush into anything serious, and he respects that. I moved to a slightly better apartment last year. Still small, but in a safer neighborhood, and it feels more like home. I've been slowly acquiring furniture from thrift stores and estate sales, building a life that's mine. The anger has faded mostly. I don't hate Tom anymore. I just feel nothing when I think about him. He married the girlfriend about a year after our divorce was final. I heard through mutual acquaintances. Good for them, I guess. I hope they're happy. I hope she never has to go through what I went through. I'm angrier at Patricia than at Tom, honestly. Tom was selfish and unkind, but at least he was honest about wanting the divorce. Patricia was supposed to be my advocate, and she gave me advice that destroyed me financially. I've thought about filing a complaint with the Bar Association, but I don't have the energy for more legal battles. I just want to move forward. Advice for anyone going through this. If you're going through a divorce and reading this, here's what I wish I'd known. When you get a settlement offer that's fair, take it. Don't let your lawyer or your anger or your sense of deserving more talk you into gambling on a better outcome. The stress and expense and uncertainty of prolonging a divorce is rarely worth whatever additional money you might get. And you might not get anything additional. You might lose everything like I did. Understand that your lawyer works for you, not the other way around. If your lawyer is encouraging you to fight for more or drag things out or go to trial, ask yourself if they're really acting in your best interest or if they're thinking about their billable hours. Not all lawyers are mercenary, but some definitely are. If there's an income and resource disparity, meaning your spouse or their family has way more money to fund the legal fight than you do, be realistic about your chances. The legal system theoretically treats everyone equally, but in practice, the person who can afford the better lawyer and longer fight has a huge advantage. Document everything, but don't let the process consume your life. Yes, you need records and evidence and documentation, but you also need to keep living. Keep working, keep seeing friends, keep doing things that aren't related to your divorce. I lost myself in the legal battle, and it wasn't healthy. Consider therapy from the start, not as a last resort. Divorce is traumatic even when it's amicable. When it's contentious and expensive and drawn out, it's devastating. Having a professional to talk through the emotional aspects while you're dealing with the legal aspects would have helped me so much. Don't take on debt you can't afford to fund a divorce. I took out $25,000 in loans to pay for a lawyer who ultimately got me $7,500 in assets. That's the worst investment I've ever made. If I'd represented myself or used a mediator or found a cheaper lawyer, I'd have come out ahead even with a less favorable settlement. Know when to walk away.
There came a point during the trial prep when I should have realized this was a losing battle and tried to settle. But I was in too deep, had spent too much money, felt like I couldn't back down. That's sunk cost fallacy, and it cost me everything. The divorce industry is broken. Lawyers bill by the hour, which means they have financial incentive to drag things out. Judges are overworked in making decisions about people's lives based on limited information and whatever mood they're in that day. The system is adversarial by design, which means it encourages conflict instead of resolution. I think about all the money that got spent on my divorce. Tom's parents probably paid $40,000 or $50,000 for his lawyer. I paid $20,000 for mine. That's $70,000 total that went to lawyers to fight over assets worth maybe $100,000. The lawyers got most of the value of our marital assets. How does that make sense? And for what? So Tom could keep a house he'll probably sell in a few years anyway? So I could learn an expensive lesson about trusting lawyers? The only people who really won in my divorce were the attorneys. I've thought a lot about what a better system would look like. Mandatory mediation before litigation, caps on legal fees in divorce cases, better enforcement of fair division laws, something to level the playing field when one party has significantly more resources than the other. I don't have all the answers, but I know the current system is deeply flawed. Today, I'm okay. Not great, not thriving, but okay. I have a roof over my head and a job I love and enough money to pay my bills with a little left over. I have friends who supported me through the darkest times. I have family who loves me. I have a therapist who's helping me work through the trauma. I have a boyfriend who's patient and kind. The debt will be paid off eventually. Maybe 2 more years if I keep making extra payments when I can. Then I'll start saving again. Maybe in 5 years I'll have enough for a down payment on a small condo. Maybe in 10 years I'll feel financially secure again. It's a long road, but I'm on it. I don't regret my marriage entirely. Tom and I had good years before it went bad. I learned things about myself and about relationships. I grew as a person even if the ending was brutal. I just wish the divorce hadn't destroyed me financially in addition to emotionally. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd taken that settlement offer. I'd probably own a condo by now. I'd be debt-free. I'd have money in savings. I'd feel secure. But I can't change the past. I can only learn from it and try not to make the same mistakes again. The biggest lesson I learned is that pride and anger and the desire for what you feel you deserve can be incredibly destructive. That settlement offer felt insufficient at the time. It felt like less than I deserved after 7 years of marriage. But it was fair, and I should have recognized that. My inability to see it clearly, combined with my lawyer's bad advice, cost me everything. I'm sharing this story because I don't want anyone else to go through what I went through. If even one person reads this and makes a smarter decision than I did, then reliving all of this was worth it. Divorce is hard enough without bankrupting yourself in the process. It's hard enough without years of legal battles and stress and anxiety. If you can settle reasonably, settle. If you can mediate instead of litigate, mediate. If you can walk away with something instead of gambling on getting more, walk away. Your mental health is worth more than whatever additional money you might win. Your financial stability is worth proving a point. Your future is worth more than punishing your ex or getting revenge through the legal system. I let my anger drive my decisions, and it cost me everything. What people don't tell you about going through a divorce like this is how it affects every single aspect of your daily life. It's not just the big moments like court dates and settlement negotiations. It's the constant, grinding stress that seeps into everything you do. I'd wake up every morning, and before I was even fully conscious, I'd feel this weight on my chest. The knowledge that I was drowning in debt, that I was fighting a battle I couldn't afford, that my entire future was uncertain. Some mornings I couldn't get out of bed. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, trying to find the energy to face another day. Teaching required me to be present and energetic and patient with 7-year-olds. Most days I could pull it off. I'd put on my teacher face, be cheerful and encouraging, help my students learn and grow. But then I'd get home and completely collapse. Some nights I'd sit on my couch in the dark for hours, too exhausted to even turn on the TV or make dinner. The financial stress was constant. Every time I bought groceries, I'd calculate whether I could afford each item. I'd put things back on the shelf because they were too expensive. I started shopping at discount grocery stores and buying the cheapest version of everything. I gave up coffee shops, gave up buying new clothes, gave up every small luxury that makes life bearable. I remember one particularly low moment when my car needed new brakes. The repair was going to cost $600. I didn't have $600. I put it on a credit card that was already close to maxed out and then cried in the auto shop parking lot because even basic car maintenance felt like a financial catastrophe. My social life disappeared. Friends would invite me out for dinner or drinks and I'd have to decline because I couldn't afford it. Eventually, they stopped inviting me. I don't blame them. Nobody wants to be around someone who's constantly stressed and broke and declining every invitation. I became isolated, which made the depression worse, which made everything harder.
There's also this deep shame that comes with losing your divorce so spectacularly. People expect that when marriages end, both parties walk away with something, that there's some basic fairness to how things get divided. When you tell people you got nothing from your divorce except debt, they look at you like you did something wrong. I stopped telling people the details. When someone would ask how the divorce went, I'd just say it was finalized and change the subject. I couldn't handle the looks of pity or confusion or judgment. I couldn't handle explaining how I'd made such catastrophic decisions. My parents knew the whole story and were supportive, but I could see the worry in their eyes. They were scared for me. Their daughter was in her 30s, deep in debt, starting over with nothing. They wanted to help, but didn't have the resources. My dad offered to get a part-time job to help me pay my legal bills. He was 68 years old. I refused, obviously, but the fact that he offered just made me feel worse about the situation I'd created. I felt like a failure. Failed marriage, failed divorce, failing at basic financial stability. I'd done everything I was supposed to do. Went to college, got a respectable job, got married, tried to build a life. And it had all fallen apart so spectacularly. About 8 months after the divorce was finalized, I hit my lowest point. I was working my teaching job during the day and tutoring 4 nights a week plus weekend mornings. I was exhausted constantly. I'd lost more weight and looked sick. My principal had called me in twice to express concern about my well-being. One Thursday evening, I was tutoring a high school student in math. We were sitting at a coffee shop and I was trying to explain algebra concepts. Halfway through the session, I just started crying. Not subtle tears, full-on sobbing. The poor kid was horrified. I apologized, said I wasn't feeling well, ended the session early and gave him a free hour. I sat in my car in the parking lot and had a complete breakdown. I was working 70 hours a week and still couldn't make ends meet. I was exhausted, depressed, isolated, and saw no way out. The debt felt insurmountable. The monthly payments felt impossible. I couldn't see how I'd ever get back to normal. I called my mom and could barely get words out through the crying. She and my dad drove to my apartment immediately, 2 hours round trip. They found me curled up on my couch, still in my work clothes, surrounded by unopened mail I'd been too anxious to deal with. My mom sat with me while my dad went through my mail and my finances. He made a spreadsheet of everything I owed, all my monthly payments, my income. It was bad, but seeing it all laid out somehow made it feel slightly more manageable. They stayed the weekend, made me food, helped me clean my apartment, forced me to go for walks and get fresh air. My dad helped me create a budget that was strict but realistic. My mom helped me write out a list of things I needed to do to take care of myself. Sleep more, eat better, cut back on tutoring to a manageable level, make time for therapy. That weekend saved me. I'd been spiraling and couldn't see it. Having my parents step in and help me see that I could survive this, that I would survive this, gave me something to hold on to. After that weekend, I made some changes. I cut back on tutoring. Yes, I needed the money, but I needed my sanity more.
I kept 2 steady tutoring clients who were easy to work with and paid well, and let the others go. That freed up 3 evenings a week. I started going to a free support group for people dealing with divorce and financial stress. It met Tuesday evenings at a local community center. Hearing other people's stories, realizing I wasn't alone in struggling, helped enormously. There were people in that group who'd been through worse than me and had come out the other side. If they could do it, maybe I could too. I got more serious about therapy. I'd been going sporadically when I could afford it, but I made it a priority. My therapist helped me work through the anger and shame and fear. Helped me see that I'd made mistakes, but that didn't make me a failure. Helped me develop coping strategies for the anxiety and depression. I started being more honest with my friends about what I was going through. Not all the details, but enough that they understood why I'd been distant. Most of them were more understanding than I'd expected. A few invited me over for dinner at their place instead of going out. Small gestures that made a big difference. I also started being more realistic about my timeline for recovery. I'd been beating myself up for not bouncing back immediately, for not having my life together yet. My therapist helped me understand that recovering from this kind of financial and emotional trauma takes years, not months. That I needed to be patient with myself. Recovery happened in small increments. Paying off one credit card and feeling that tiny bit of relief. Getting a small raise at work and having an extra $100 a month. Finding a great deal on a used couch that made my apartment feel more like home. Making it through a whole week without crying. These tiny victories added up. I started keeping a journal of good things that happened each day. Some days it was just that a student had a breakthrough in reading, or that I'd made a really good sandwich for lunch, or that I'd watched a funny show and actually laughed. Forcing myself to acknowledge the good, no matter how small, helped shift my mindset gradually from despair to cautious hope. About a year after my breakdown, I paid off my first personal loan, the one for $10,000 at the terrible interest rate. The monthly payment had been $320, and suddenly I didn't have to make it anymore. That extra money each month felt like a fortune. I immediately put it toward the other loan in my credit cards. I also got a small inheritance when my grandmother passed away. She'd left each of her grandchildren $5,000. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to clear my remaining credit card debt. Having those cards at zero for the first time in years felt incredible. I cried when I made the final payment, but this time from relief instead of despair. Forgiveness, sort of. I've struggled a lot with forgiveness. Not forgiving Tom, that I've mostly made peace with. He was selfish and he cheated and he hurt me, but he's living his life and I'm living mine. We have no contact and probably never will again. Whatever anger I had toward him has faded into indifference. Forgiving myself has been harder. I made a terrible decision by countering that settlement offer. I trusted the wrong person. I let my emotions override my judgment. Those mistakes cost me years of financial security and enormous stress. How do you forgive yourself for that? My therapist says self-forgiveness isn't about saying what I did was okay. It's about acknowledging that I made the best decision I could with the information and emotional state I had at the time. I was hurt and angry and exhausted. My lawyer, who I'd hired specifically for her expertise, told me to counter. I was in survival mode and not thinking clearly. That doesn't make the decision right, but it makes it understandable. I'm working on it. Some days I can look at myself in the mirror and feel compassion for the person who was struggling so much. Other days I still feel angry at myself for being so stupid. It's a process. Forgiving Patricia, my lawyer, is complicated too. She gave me bad advice that cost me everything. But I don't think she meant to hurt me. I think she genuinely believed we could get more and was trying to advocate for me. She was wrong, spectacularly wrong, but I don't think it was malicious. I've thought about whether I should have sued her for malpractice. I looked into it actually. Talked to another lawyer about whether I had a case. He said probably not. Legal malpractice requires proving that her advice fell below the standard of care and directly caused my losses. But she could argue that her advice was within normal practice, that settlement negotiations are unpredictable, that Tom's decision to withdraw the offer wasn't foreseeable. It would be expensive to pursue and unlikely to succeed. So I've tried to let that go too. She got her $20,000 in fees, I got my painful lesson. We're even in the worst possible way. The ripple effects. What I didn't anticipate was how the divorce would affect other areas of my life beyond just finances and emotions. It changed how I view relationships, how I think about money, how I approach decisions, everything. I'm much more cautious now about trusting people. When I started dating again, I was hyper-vigilant about red flags. Any sign that someone was being dishonest or secretive, and I was done. I probably ended a few relationships prematurely because I was so scared of being hurt again. My relationship with money changed dramatically. Before the divorce, I wasn't great with money, but I wasn't terrible either. I had some savings, paid my bills, didn't think about it too much. Now I'm borderline obsessive. I track every dollar, maintain a detailed budget, check my bank accounts daily. I'm scared constantly about money in a way I never was before. My career aspirations changed too. I'd always just wanted to be a good teacher. That was enough. But after the divorce, I started thinking about how vulnerable I'd been financially, how my relatively low salary had put me at a disadvantage. I started taking on leadership roles at school, went back to get my master's degree to qualify for a higher pay scale, looked into administrative positions that pay better. I'm still a teacher and still love it, but now I also think strategically about my career in terms of financial security. I never want to be that vulnerable again. The what-ifs. I still play the what-ifs game sometimes. What if I'd taken that settlement offer? What if I'd hired a different lawyer? What if I'd represented myself? What if I'd just agreed to whatever Tom wanted early on to avoid the fight? What if I'd seen the affair coming and left first? What if I'd never married Tom at all? The what-ifs can drive you crazy if you let them. I try not to dwell, but sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, my brain goes there.
I calculate how much money I'd have if I'd taken the original offer. $45,000 for the house equity, $7,500 in savings, $43,000 in alimony. $95,000 total minus maybe $5,000 in legal fees if we'd settled early. I'd have $90,000. Instead, I have the last remnants of debt I'm still paying off. Instead of $90,000 in the bank, I'm still clawing my way back to zero. But then I think about what I've gained, as cheesy as that sounds. I learned I'm stronger than I thought. I survived something that felt unsurvivable. I built a new life from nothing. I learned to advocate for myself and set boundaries and recognize bad advice. Those lessons were expensive, but they were valuable. I also learned who my real friends are. The people who stuck by me through the worst of it, who offered support without judgment, who understood when I couldn't go out or needed to cancel plans. Those friendships are deeper now because they've been tested. And I learned what I actually need to be happy. Turns out it's not a big house or nice furniture or impressive savings account. It's stability, meaningful work, people who care about me, and the ability to take care of myself. Everything else is just details. If any divorce lawyers are reading this, please hear me. Your clients are going through one of the most difficult times of their lives. They're emotionally compromised, financially stressed, and depending on you to guide them through an incredibly complex process. When you encourage a client to reject a fair settlement and push for more, think carefully about whether that advice is truly in their best interest or whether it's in yours. Yes, a longer fight means more billable hours, but it also means more stress, more expense, and more risk for your client. Be honest about the risks. Don't just tell clients what they could win if everything goes perfectly. Tell them what they could lose if things go badly. Make sure they understand that going to trial is a gamble and that judges are unpredictable. If your client is taking on debt to pay for the divorce, make sure they understand the full implications. Help them see that even if they win everything they're asking for, they might not come out ahead after legal fees. Be realistic about costs and timelines. And please, please consider that your client's well-being is more important than winning the case or proving a point. Sometimes the best outcome is a quick, fair settlement, even if it's not the maximum possible award. Sometimes protecting your client means encouraging them to settle rather than fight. I wish Patricia had told me those things.
I wish she'd said that the settlement offer on the table was actually really good and that fighting for more was a huge gamble that could backfire spectacularly. I wish she'd warned me about the possibility of ending up with nothing. Maybe I wouldn't have listened. I was pretty angry and irrational at the time, but at least I would have been making an informed decision. It's been over 3 years now since Tom first asked for a divorce. Over 2 years since the divorce was finalized. The acute pain has faded into a dull ache and then into just a memory of pain. I can think about what happened without my chest tightening. I can tell the story without crying. Progress. My debt will be completely paid off in about 18 months. I'm counting down the days. The moment I make that final payment, I'm going to celebrate somehow. Maybe just a nice dinner out, nothing extravagant, but something to mark the end of that chapter. I'm saving money again, slowly. I have about $4,000 in my emergency fund now. It's not much, but it's something. It means if my car breaks down or I have an unexpected expense, I won't have to put it on a credit card. That security feels amazing. I'm also thinking about buying a place of my own in a few years. Not a house, probably a small condo. Something that's mine. My credit has recovered enough that I'll likely qualify for a mortgage. I'm researching first-time homebuyer programs and saving for a down payment. It feels good to have a goal, something to work toward. My relationship is going well. We've been dating for over a year now, and it's healthy and stable. He knows my whole story and hasn't run away screaming. He's supportive without being overbearing. He respects my need to maintain financial independence. We're talking about moving in together eventually, but taking it slow. I'm not ready to merge finances or lives completely yet. Maybe someday. Things I'm grateful for. Despite everything, I have things to be grateful for. I have a job I love that gives my life meaning. Not everyone can say that. I have students who need me and benefit from my teaching. I have colleagues who've become friends. I have job security and health insurance and a pension fund that's growing. I have my health. The stress of the divorce took a physical toll, but I've recovered. I'm eating better, sleeping better, taking care of myself. I'm back to a healthy weight. The panic attacks have stopped. The depression has lifted mostly. I'm okay. I have my family. My parents who dropped everything to help me when I was at my lowest. My siblings who checked on me regularly and offered support in whatever ways they could. My grandmother's inheritance coming at just the right time to pull me out of the worst of the debt. Family isn't always blood, but in my case, my blood family showed up for me, and I'm grateful. I have friends who stuck with me, who understood when I disappeared for a while, who welcomed me back when I was ready, who never made me feel ashamed for what happened. Real friends are priceless, and I have a few really good ones. I have a future. For a while there, I couldn't see past the next day, the next bill, the next court date. Now I can think about next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I can make plans. I can dream about possibilities. That's a kind of wealth that has nothing to do with bank accounts. If you're in the middle of a divorce right now and feeling overwhelmed and scared, I want you to know it gets better. Not quickly, not easily, but it does get better. The acute pain fades, the financial pressure eases, the confusion about who you are without your spouse clarifies. You survive and then eventually you thrive. Here are the things that helped me the most. Therapy. I cannot stress this enough. Find a good therapist who specializes in divorce and trauma. It's worth the money even when money is tight. Your mental health is the foundation everything else is built on. Support systems. Whether it's family, friends, a support group, online communities, whatever. Find people who understand what you're going through and lean on them. You cannot do this alone. Basic self-care. When you're overwhelmed, basic things like eating and sleeping and exercising fall by the wayside. Force yourself to maintain these basics. They seem insignificant, but they matter enormously. Financial honesty. Look at your actual numbers, not what you wish they were. Make a budget based on reality. Cut expenses ruthlessly. Find ways to increase income if possible. The sooner you get real about your financial situation, the sooner you can start fixing it. Patience with yourself. Recovery takes time. You'll have bad days even when you're generally doing better. That's normal. Don't beat yourself up for struggling. This is hard, and you're doing your best. Focus on what you can control. You can't control what your ex does or what the judge decides or how long the process takes. You can control your own choices, your own responses, your own life going forward. Put your energy there. I'm not the same person I was when I married Tom. That person was naive and trusting and believed that doing the right things would lead to good outcomes. That person thought the legal system was fair and that lawyers had their clients' best interests at heart. That person thought marriage was forever and that love was enough. The person I am now is more cynical but also more realistic. I know that bad things happen to good people, that fairness is not guaranteed, that you can do everything right and still lose. That's not pessimism, it's just understanding how the world actually works. But I'm also more resilient. I know I can survive really difficult things because I have. I know I'm capable of building a life from scratch because I did. I know I'm stronger than I ever thought possible because I had to be. I'm more cautious but also more confident. Cautious about who I trust and how I make major decisions. Confident in my ability to take care of myself and handle whatever comes next. It's a strange combination, but it works. I'm more empathetic too. When I meet someone going through a divorce or financial struggles or any kind of major life crisis, I really understand what they're experiencing. I can offer support that comes from genuine knowledge of how hard it is. That's worth something. Sometimes I think about the parallel universe where I took that settlement offer. Parallel universe Maya has $90,000 in the bank. She bought a nice condo. She's financially secure. She moved on from the divorce quickly and didn't spend years climbing out of debt. But I wonder if parallel universe Maya learned the lessons I learned. If she developed the resilience I developed. If she knows herself as well as I know myself now. Maybe she's happier than me because she's not carrying this trauma. Or maybe she's less prepared for future challenges because she hasn't been tested the way I was. I'll never know, obviously. I'm stuck in this universe with this version of my life. But I'm making peace with it. This is the hand I was dealt, and I'm playing it the best I can. If I could go back and talk to myself on that day when Patricia suggested we counter the settlement offer, what would I say? I've thought about this a lot. I'd tell myself that I'm about to make a decision that will haunt me for years, that the extra money I might gain is not worth the risk, that the settlement on the table is actually really good, and I should take it immediately before Tom changes his mind. I'd tell myself that my anger at Tom and his family is valid but shouldn't drive major financial decisions, that revenge through the legal system is expensive and rarely satisfying, that the best revenge is actually just moving on and building a good life without him. I'd tell myself that Patricia means well, but her advice is wrong, that she doesn't have to live with the consequences of fighting and losing. I do. That I should trust my own instincts over her professional opinion because sometimes professionals are wrong. I'd tell myself that pride isn't worth bankruptcy, that accepting a fair deal isn't the same as letting Tom win, that walking away with something is infinitely better than gambling everything and ending up with nothing. But I can't go back. I can only go forward. And going forward means accepting what happened, learning from it, and making better choices from here on out. I've debated whether to share this story publicly. It's embarrassing to admit how badly I messed up. It's painful to relive all the details. There's a part of me that wants to keep this private, to not expose my failures to the world. But I keep thinking about how alone I felt during the worst of it, how I couldn't find stories from other people who'd been through something similar, how I would have given anything to read an account from someone who'd made the same mistakes and survived, just to know it was possible. If this story helps even one person avoid my mistakes, it's worth the embarrassment. If someone reads this and decides to take the settlement offer on the table instead of gambling for more, I'll feel like something good came out of my disaster. If a lawyer reads this and thinks twice before encouraging a client to reject a reasonable offer, that's valuable. If a person going through a divorce reads this and feels less alone, that matters. My mess can be someone else's warning. My mistakes can be someone else's lesson. That gives meaning to what I went through. Today is a good day. I'm writing this from my small but comfortable apartment. I'm not rich, but my bills are paid. I'm not ecstatically happy, but I'm content, and that feels like a miracle after where I've been. I have a job I love, a man who cares about me, family and friends who support me, and a future that looks brighter than my recent past. The debt that nearly crushed me is almost gone. The shame that weighed me down has lifted mostly. The fear that paralyzed me has eased. I'm not all the way back to where I was before the divorce. I may never be. But I'm building something new, something that's entirely mine, something that no one can take away from me. And that's enough. To anyone reading this who's struggling, please know that recovery is possible. It takes time and work and patience and support, but it's possible. You can survive this. You can rebuild. You can be okay again and then better than okay. Take the fair settlement. Protect your mental health. Don't let anger drive your decisions. Trust yourself. And know that whatever happens, you're stronger than you think and you will get through this. I did, and I'm nothing special. Just a second-grade teacher who made some really bad choices and paid dearly for them, but survived anyway. If I can do it, so can you. That's my story. That's my disaster and my recovery and my hard-won wisdom. I hope it helps someone. I hope it matters. And I hope that wherever Tom is, whatever he's doing, he never has to learn these lessons the way I did. Did this story get to you? Leave a like and subscribe. More true stories are coming soon.